Hello and welcome. Today we have another non-electronics video, but it's a job I have to get done and I figured what the heck, I'll let you ride along. My old Dodge Dakota has developed a fair amount of play in the steering, and I know for a fact it's this intermediate shaft. This thing connects under the brake booster up here, goes down behind the frame over here and goes into the rack and pinion steering, and this lower universal joint on mine has gotten worn to the point where I have about an inch of play in the steering wheel. That in and of itself doesn't bother me too much, but every once in a while it'll bind up and steer correctly, and then in the middle of a corner pop, and you'll get that sudden jerk of the steering wheel, which isn't bad in the summertime, but when you're on a snowy road that can scare the daylights out of you. So we're going to replace it. This one happens to be a Dorman. Let's see if we can get this in the camera. 425257. And the job, while a pain in the ass, isn't as bad as you think it might be. And we're going to show you some tricks. First of all, when you buy one of these, it doesn't come with the hardware. These are M10. So open the box at your local parts emporium and make sure the thing has bolts in it. If it doesn't, you're going to have to get some quality, real quality 10mm bolts to put into this. You don't want to use the Swiss cheese bolts from the local Homeless Despot, because these bolts have to be under a fair amount of tension to correctly close this around the shaft and take up all the looseness. You don't want this thing shucking back and forth. All your work will be for nothing if this is slipping back and forth on the shaft. Another thing you need to know in removing this, you have to take these bolts out completely. If you can see inside there, I'm not sure if the light's good, these threads, this bolt actually goes through a recessed area on the shaft, so that if the bolt loosens up, it still can't fall off the shaft. The bolt has to be completely removed before you can get this off the shaft. Then it will slip off. What that means is, if your rusty bolt, if the head breaks off, you're going to be in trouble. You won't be able to get this off without drilling through the bolt to remove the pieces of the bolt. So bear that in mind. If the head snaps off and you can't understand why it's not coming off, it's because the bolt has to be removed completely. It's no good anyway. Go ahead and hack the thing up with a hacksaw if you have to, but it's got to come off. The next thing is, how do we get to this? Unless you're a 150-pound 20-something contortionist, you can't get to it from the top, because the top is underneath the brake booster. You can't get to it from the bottom because you can't reach up to the top joint, which means we'll be going in through the wheel well here. Let me move the camera. Now you're probably saying, it doesn't look like there's a lot of access here through the wheel well. This is in the way. We're going to remove that, and that is not a terribly hard job. This is held in by these plastic pop rivets. Let's see if we can get a closer view of that. Okay, to make things a little bit easier, I've taken the wheel off so that we can reach in here without anything in the way. I was going to do that anyway so I could get in here and work. Before we go any further, a disclaimer. This vehicle is sitting on 3 of its tires. This corner that is jacked up is now supported by no less than 4 jack stands, and the jack is also backed up against the frame, not carrying the load, but backed up against the frame just in case. Do not, and I'm going to say it again, do not get underneath a vehicle with only a jack supporting it. If you do, you will get no sympathy from me when it falls and kills you. I will say thank you for throwing some chlorine in the gene pool. 100 people a year get killed underneath vehicles when they fall off a jack or a jack fails. You're just as stupid as the morons who stick their hands in running snowblowers or underneath running lawnmowers. Thank you for cleaning up the gene pool. Okay, enough said about that. Here are 2 of those plastic rivets. Getting them out couldn't be simpler. Do not get your drill out, you'll only make a mess of things. Take a punch. This one's 1/8 inch in diameter. Put it in the center, and it may take a, there. The center just popped out of it. There's another one popped out. Then you can simply get underneath it with either a screwdriver or where did I put my tool? Damn it. I always put the tools out of reach. There we go. This little fork tool is for taking body panels off. This will pop these right out. That's what it looks like. Now I'm going to take one of these out. I'm going to show you a new one. I'm going to show you the tool to put them in. Okay. Here is a brand new rivet, right fresh out of the box. Here are the parts that I just removed from the fender. This works pretty much like a normal pop rivet. It's got a mandrel or a nail, and you slide a pop rivet tool over it and just use a pop rivet tool. This thing is held together. This nail works a little bit differently on these than it does on a normal pop rivet. I hope this is staying in focus. Focus, as Abe says, focus, you fack. This nail, I don't know if I'm going to be able to push it in hard enough by hand. This nail keeps this compressed when it's in the fender. The nail holds it down. The way it holds it down is the nail has serrations right here. The line you see right there is the break point. These serrations engage in the head when this is compressed. The way I'm doing this with the camera is fun. So when this compresses, those serrations get pulled down and they're inside the head, and that's what keeps this thing compressed. By driving a pin up through the hole in the end and driving the nail, what remains of the nail out, it allows this piece to relax and the inner fender well comes off. These things are cheap. They're 16 cents a piece. I'm going to show you the box. In boxes of 100, so I'll always have them on hand. Do not buy these from the dealer. Those thieving son of a you-know-whats will charge you anywhere between $3 and $5 a piece for those plastic rivets. I paid $15.79 for the entire box of 100. That's just about 16 cents a piece. There's your part number. They're Marson. And the 48350 is for the 100-piece box. These same pop rivets are available in boxes of 50. If your local parts emporium also supplies auto body stuff, paints, thinners, spray guns, basic auto body stuff, they probably have them in stock. If not, eBay has them for $15.79, was it? $15.79 delivered. But there's all your pertinent information. There's your Chrysler part number, your AMC part number, your General Motors part number, and your Ford part number. It will cross-reference over to this Marson rivet. These also are made in China. You can buy the Chinese ones if you don't care if your wheel well falls off heading down the highway at 70 miles an hour. I'd rather go with the better ones. These may even be made in China. It doesn't say so on the box, but at least there's some quality control going through Marson. Now, your normal pop rivet tool, like this guy, won't work with these because the largest anvil, where my thumb is here, won't fit over the nail or the mandrel on these rivets. And I didn't want to destroy my pop rivet tool. I went to the local dollar tool store and bought this. And it still should have the price sticker on it right here. Is it legible? $3. And this also happens to be a Marson, and I didn't even notice that. I've had this for about 6 years, and I didn't even notice the name on it until today when I went to make the video. This was $3 at the local dollar tool store, and all I did is drill the hole out right there so that it would fit the mandrel of these plastic pop rivets, and I've been using this for several years for $3. So if you don't want to wreck your good pop rivet tool, go to the dollar store, find one of these, drill the hole a little bigger, you're in business. Oh, and one more quick thing I've got to get out of the way. I've had several emails lately One was in the comment section, actually, and a couple have come as emails. People asking me for more details. How do I build a power supply? How do I wire up to the 230 volt line to run one of these ZVS heaters that used to be a cook stove top? Which way do you turn the bolts to do this? You know, where should I place the jack under my car? I don't want to be a smartass, but if I have to explain, you wouldn't understand. That is, if you don't have the basic knowledge to take the first steps, I am not going to be responsible for you dying. These videos, or this video for example, is for the shade tree mechanic who has some experience replacing parts, but might not know exactly how to get inside this fender well or what the easiest path to do this is if he's considering doing this job. This is just to give somebody out there a quick heads up. Hey, here's an easier way to get in. If I have to show you which way to turn the bolts, what size wrench to use, etc., and so on, you probably don't have enough knowledge to do this safely. Find yourself a local high school that's offering up basic auto mechanics courses. Better yet, buy yourself some good basic tools, work on the lawnmower for a couple of years until you know your way around your wrenches and how to take a simple motor apart. A lawnmower won't fall on you and kill you. A motor vehicle can. Off my soapbox. Right. We have the inner fender well removed. And those who balk at spending $15 for a box of 100 of those rivets, I know it's a 6-pack of beer, but let's face it, you can only rent beer. You only have it for about an hour and then it's gone. These will sit in your toolbox after you've done this job. It takes 12 of these to replace this inner fender well, which means you can do this 8 times. And if you're like me and you live in New England and you have a rusty old truck, you're going to be in here a couple more times. I've already been in here to replace all the hydraulic lines that rusted out. That happens in New England all the time. I had to replace this manifold clamp that holds up the exhaust pipe to the manifold. That had rotted through. I had to replace that. What else have I been in here for? Oh, I don't remember. Replacing brake lines, however, and working on the exhaust system is so convenient when this inner fender well is missing. You can get in here, easily change shock absorbers. You can get it all kinds of stuff. Power steering pump. Things that just are virtually impossible to do otherwise are so simple once this inner fender well is out that if you have the box of 100 of these sitting in your toolbox, you'll think nothing of popping this thing off. It only takes about 5 minutes to pop this inner fender well off. Get in there, get the job done. Then you can pop the thing back in another 5 minutes and you're back on the road. So that $15 is a good, or $16, $15.79 is a very good investment. And while we're right here, let's see if we can show you the steering column. There's the play in the column. And you can hear that universal joint clicking away. It's the lower universal joint and it is covered. I don't know if this still photograph is in enough focus. You can see all the rust dust from the bearings fretting away inside the universal joint. Now there's no real danger of this actually falling apart because the little cross that's inside the universal joint is captured inside the cups. This thing would have to get horribly loose before it could actually fall apart. However, it isn't very safe to drive it like this in the winter on icy roads because you're never sure if you're losing traction or if it's the steering slop. So we're going to get it replaced. You can see now I have access to the upper bolt, which is underneath the brake canister, which is here. The brake canister, actually the master cylinder, is way over here where my hand is. So you would have to try to reach down underneath and get all the way back in here if you did it from the top. And if you tried to do it from the bottom, the catalytic converter, all the hydraulic lines, the suspension components, everything's in the way. You can't reach that from the bottom. About the only practical way to do this job is to open it up like I've done here, and then you can reach inside and get to this thing and replace this shaft. The whole front end of this truck is new. It's got new shocks, new upper and lower ball joints, new steering rack, new inner and outer rod ends. I went through the front end of this thing a couple years ago, and this at the time didn't really have any play in it. That's developed over the last couple of years. So we're going to get this piece replaced, and the front end will be basically brand new in this truck. Okay, here on the bench we have the new one and the old one. And it's probably going to be tough under this fluorescent light, but you might be able to see that characteristic red ochre color. That's from bearings that are fretting away, rusting away, and disintegrating in little pieces. And you can see here, I hope, the play that's in these two. So that's why I've got the play in the steering wheel. And this is the new one. And I've noticed one distinct difference. These are aluminum on the original. These are steel on the new one. I had a devil of a time breaking this end loose from the steering rack, and it had only been on there a couple of years. The first time it came off, it was a horror show, and the bolt was actually, I had the bolt snapped off like I warned you it might, and I had to drill this out and put an English bolt through it, because the aluminum against the steel just is, that's a bad combination, especially in salt weather. Salt water, you know, we have a lot of salt on the roads here. This one should fare a little bit better, even though it's made in China. But it's a decent looking piece. The bearings are nice and tight. So we're going to get that thing installed and be done with this job. Shiny brand new steering column in place. It literally fell in and was real simple going in. Now, a word of caution, something I didn't mention early on. When this piece is out, or when it's disconnected, do not spin the steering column. If you've got kids out there helping you playing around, there shouldn't be kids in the car while it's up on a jack, but you know, kids are kids. Don't let them in the cab. Don't let them turn the steering wheel. They're going to want to play. If they find out it's free, they're going to want to spin it. You will destroy what is called the clock spring connector. Inside the steering column, behind the steering wheel, is a round connector that has a ribbon cable wound in a spiral. That's how your cruise control, your horn, if you have radio buttons, that's how all of that stuff gets passed from the steering wheel itself to the electronics in the car. If the steering wheel makes more than about a revolution and a half, you're going to rip that clock spring connector apart. They're about $80, plus you have to pull the steering wheel off. Just a word of warning. I've replaced the clock spring connector in here because my airbag warning light was coming on when I bought this truck. And the horn also failed a couple of weeks after I bought it. I knew immediately what the problem was. So be very careful. Once this shaft is disconnected, that steering wheel will be free to spin and you'll destroy that connector. Okay, we're just about done. In about the same amount of time it would have taken me to go into town, pay somebody to change my oil, and turn around and drive back home, we have a new steering column in. And we're going to put our pop rivets in. And when we push our new pop rivet into the gun, it'll push the mandrel from the old rivet out. And then I usually hold the pop rivet and open the gun so I get as much bite on the rivet as possible. And if I can just get it up here to where the hole is, there it is. And zip, zip, pop. That's simple. Do that 11 more times, put the tire on, take it for a drive, I'll be done. Hope somebody found some useful information in here. Hope I saved somebody some grief. Hope I didn't insult anybody. But what had to be said, had to be said. I'm the radio mechanic. See ya.